The Seahawks have set a record this year for their first 7 games, giving up just 9 sacks, but not all is paradise on their offensive line during this 2025 season. Is an upgrade in order at the right guard position? We'll be breaking it all down here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, for our Tuesday show by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12 listening in, whether you're in nearby Everett, Washington, or down in Globe, Arizona. We appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. The Seahawks have had quite a bit of improvement along their offensive line, except for one exception, and we'll be diving into whether or not a big move needs to be made before the trade deadline. And speaking of the trade deadline, it's time for pipe dream season. Who would be an impact superstar that potentially could be added to Seattle's roster for the playoff push that maybe isn't realistic? We'll see if they're realistic or not. And we'll take a look at what's new with the Washington Commanders coming out of a tough loss to the Kansas City Chiefs as the Seahawks prepare to face them on Sunday Night Football in Landover. All this brought your way courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. Right now with FanDuel, you can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. So far this season, at least from a pass protection standpoint, the Seahawks statistically have been much improved. Sam Darnold only being sacked 9 times in the first 7 games. That's the fewest sacks given up on the quarterback in Seahawks history in the first 7 games. So from that perspective, Rob, Seattle's offensive line is much better. And I don't think that it's a fallacy. This group has been much better than what they have been for quite some time with Gray Zabel, Jalen Sundell, the way the tackles are playing. This has been a really solid season. Sam Darnold has certainly helped getting the ball out quickly and avoiding pressure when it is back there in the pocket. But the offensive line overall has been better. With that being said, and we hate it that this has cropped up again with how Anthony Bradford looked in training camp, and to an extent in the early stages of this season was playing okay. We are once again back to that point where you have that big BUT. But even with this offensive line playing the way that they have as a group, it does feel like there is one missing link that is needing to be upgraded for this group to truly take off. And the run game in particular, it just has been a struggle for Bradford. The last several games have been much worse than early on in the year. And right now, he is one of the 4 lowest in the NFL to guard position for pass block efficiency rate. That is certainly not good. This was not the hope when he won this starting job back, and the way he played early in the season, it suggested maybe that move was going to be okay. But this does seem like this is now a bigger deal for the Seahawks to try to address before November 4th's deadline than it may have been even a couple weeks ago.
See, I'm not so sure I agree with that. I definitely think it's a concern. I think that when you look at Seattle's offense, the way that they are essentially, humming at this point. I mean, Sam Darnold looks like a possible MVP candidate. Certainly Jackson Smith and Jigba does. As we've talked about, the Seahawks have rushed for a touchdown in every single game. They're averaging well over 100 yards rushing, while the efficiency hasn't necessarily been great. Seattle's offense certainly has been very productive. It does feel like Anthony Bradford is kind of the sore thumb that is very easy to kind of, can be concerned about. But at the same time, I also think that it's important for Seahawks fans to recognize that, this is not a fantasy football trade. You can't just, trade out a player, insert him into the offensive line and expect the continuity and the trust between the rest of the 4 offensive linemen and the quarterback and the running backs just to seamlessly work together. Anthony Bradford is just a 24-year-old player at this point. The physical potential is very, very good. I just think that if Seattle is going to make a move here, then they had better be damn sure that this is actually going to be an upgrade. Otherwise, I don't think that you're actually helping yourself out. This is a team that feels like they're kind of starting to crest a little bit, that they are playing better and better football with their best football still to come. And so, again, if you were going to make a trade for, say, a Cesar Ruiz, who we talked about before, from the New Orleans Saints, who John Benton and Rick Dennison are going to know incredibly well, that I can get behind. But just to throw out any of these other offensive linemen that may or may not be a schematic fit, a personality fit, a toughness fit, that's where I do struggle a little bit with this idea that at least that some have. That if the Seahawks don't swing big for a right guard during this trade deadline era, then basically they've swung and missed. And so that's where I do struggle with this a little bit, because I think that Seattle does not have to make a move and still wind up being one of the elite teams in the NFC.
You make a lot of good points, but I don't agree with you at this point because, look, the film and the stats paint different pictures here. The stats are not terrible. If you look at the stat line, I mean, 17 pressures, that's still quite a few for a guard. 2 sacks, 2 penalties this year. Bradford's made some improvements in some areas. The problem is that these numbers, even the 95.5% pass block efficiency rate, which again is one of the lowest in the league for any qualified guard, it doesn't match the film, and not in a good way. Like, there are still way too many plays. The one that jumps out to me immediately in that Texans game, there was a play where Anthony Bradford basically tackled Zach Charbonnet, who was 4 or 5 yards in the backfield in pass protection. That's how badly he got beat initially off the ball. And this is still the lunging issues, the technique. He's in year 3. Those things should be getting better, and they're not. And so, look, I get he's a young player, but he's played a lot of football. They've started a lot of games with him at this point. I think that this is a position. I'm not saying that they absolutely have to make a trade, but I think they have got to be looking hard and fast, trying to see if there's something like – I still think Wyatt Teller in the short term – Wyatt Teller is going to be a better player for you in the interior. And I think from a continuity standpoint, this is a guy who's played a lot of games. He's going to be able to mesh with these young guys. And they could use a veteran that has played a lot of games. Cesar Ruiz has already played in this system with Clint Kubiak and with John Benton. And he's a young guy. You can plug him in there. I think both those players instantly make this offensive line a lot better. It makes all the other guys who are playing solid football better, because your weakest link gets raised. I feel like offensive lines, it is truly one of those things. You're only as good as your weakest link. And right now, this has been very noticeable to me on film, that right guard position. I'm not just trading for anybody. Like, if it's somebody like an Austin Corbett who you floated from Carolina, like, if I'm going to the Panthers, like, I'm seeing if I can get Damian Lewis back. That's what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm not trading for somebody that's a veteran that is going to flatline what I have right now. There has to be a clear upgrade. So you and I are in agreement on that standpoint, but I think you've got to be looking for that. And I think there's definitely players out there that could be available that you could justify trading for. And there might even be some players like Evan Neal who haven't worked with their first team that are still young that you could bring in that might mesh and be able to make things work. At minimum, John Schneider has got to be taking a strong look at and picking up the phone, because I do think that this is still the weakest link on this football team right now, is this right guard spot.
I would agree that it's the weakest link, on the football team. Again, I just think that there is a limited number of players that are likely to be available that are likely also to be able to come in and make a fairly seamless transition to Seattle's starting right guard. And so I think that you're talking about maybe 4 or 5 players at this point. And I'm not suggesting there's only 4 or 5 right guards in the NFL that are better than what the Seahawks have currently in Anthony Bradford and Christian Haynes, who's coming back from injury. But I do think that there are a number of the teams that have quality right guards are also very much in the playoff hunt, and they are looking to keep their players. So some of the players that you just mentioned, whether it be a Wyatt Teller, Cleveland, or an Evan Neal with the New York Giants, I mean, teams that are stubbing their toes at this point, sure, that makes some sense on paper. But again, I kind of go back to the pre-NFL draft evaluation of a player like Evan Neal, who there were some who questioned his toughness. I don't know that's going to be something that John Schneider is going to want to prioritize. Or Jackson Powers-Johnson, for example, a player you and I have both were very high on at Oregon. I was very high on at Oregon, went to Oregon's pro day, spoke to a number of offensive line coaches there who were not very high on Jackson Powers-Johnson because they didn't think that he had the personality fit that a lot of NFL clubs are looking for, the guy in the trenches. Now, I'm not saying the Seahawks feel that way, but again, this is more complicated than just, oh, you need a right guard, you go to the car lot and you find one. I mean, this is, again, I think for a team that is playing as good a football as the Seahawks are right now, I think they are willing to just kind of absorb some missed blocks, and there are a lot of them. I'm not denying that, but it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't kind of a conversation. I feel like Abe Lucas at right tackle and Jalen Sundell at center know what to expect. Certainly Sam Darnold and the Seattle's running backs know what to expect out of Anthony Bradford. If you just throw in some other option there, then again, that could be the type of move that may look good on paper, but actually winds up being a net loss on the actual field.
We'll see what the Seahawks do or don't do on that front. Mike McDonald made it sound like there wasn't anything coming on Monday in terms of offensive line changes, but the coaches have a tendency to say things like that, even if there might be a trade in the works. We'll see what happens at that right guard position, but certainly one to monitor given the struggles Bradford has had, especially in these last few games where it seems like he's regressed a little bit. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the trade deadline. And listen, this show is all about authenticity and looking at realistic trades, but we're going to kind of spin away from that a little bit today, and we're going to dive into some potential Cinderella trades, pipe dream trades that we would love to see the Seahawks make, or at least attempt to make. We'll be diving into that coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. We greatly appreciate you making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are closing in on the NFL trade deadline coming up quickly on November 4th, so a couple days after the Seahawks play the Commanders on Sunday Night Football. This has usually been the sweet spot here on Tuesday or Wednesday where the Seahawks try to make moves, and it's possible they could do something coming right out of that Commanders game too, Rob. But let's talk some pipe dream trades, because I think the ones we just talked about a little bit with the right guard position, I wouldn't be surprised if Wyatt Teller or Cesar Ruiz ends up coming to Seattle. Those, to me, are not pipe dream trades. I can see reasons why both teams would make those deals, with both the Saints and the Browns clearly in rebuild mode and set to be top 3 picking in the 2026 NFL draft. You can move on from players like that trying to recoup draft picks. But there's always that urge to look at players. If you want to make the argument the Seahawks are one player away, I don't know that they are one player away from winning a Super Bowl unless it's a certain player. There might be one or two that are that player that I think can elevate them to that level. And I think that's what makes this conversation so fun, especially when you consider that there are some talented players around the league, even on some good teams, that aren't necessarily happy with their current situations which opens the door for John Schneider to maybe make a call, and then something unexpected happens before November 4th.
Yeah, no question about it. I think, again, you look at some of the teams that are struggling right now, and if they have an absolute superstar that is just so angry at what's going on with their current franchise, and John Schneider, of course, is as willing as anybody to roll the dice. And that's been one of the kind of complaints that some have had about John, is that he is willing to make the gutsy trade. Say what you will about the trade for Jimmy Graham or for Percy Harvin, whether they worked or not. I would argue in some ways they absolutely worked, but at the same time, others would argue that they did not. But they certainly were aggressive. And so if the Seahawks somehow feel that Myles Garrett is available, to me, that would be the number one player that I think you have to mention here. I just don't think the edge rusher is such an area of concern for this club that you absolutely have to make this move. But you were talking about a first ballot Hall of Fame player. And so certainly that's where the conversation for me, if we're talking about swinging for the fences, Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns would be swinging for the fences, Shohei Ohtani, Cal Raleigh style.
Yeah, this is a 60-plus home run swing of the bat by John Schneider if he does this. And those of you that are watching, look, I have my new website, Emerald City Spectrum. I did a lengthy video on our YouTube channel that's also available on the site for free. It is not on the subscription paywall, but looking at a potential Myles Garrett trade. And I'm going to reiterate what I said in that video, that I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's a very slim possibility, but I don't think it's in the impossible realm anymore. And the reason that I would say that, Cleveland is 2-5. They still don't have a quarterback. Maybe Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders ends up being that guy. I'm not convinced that's going to be the case. I think they're like the New York Jets. I just don't know that any quarterback can land in those stadiums and play well there. I just don't know that it can happen with those two organizations. They are in a position that even if they can get things turned around in the next few years, by the time you're contending, Myles Garrett's 33, 34, probably still going to be a good player, but why not go get maximum value? He's coming off a 5-sack game against the New England Patriots, and they got blown out. It was the only good thing that happened the entire game, and you can just tell how frustrated that he is. I mean, the guy is, as you said, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer who teammates love, coaches love, and he can't get to go to the playoffs because they just can't build a roster around it. And it's been that way his entire career for the most part. Like, from Cleveland's standpoint, I don't know if their owner, quite frankly, to be blunt, I don't know if their owner's smart enough to know this, but they got to do something there to try to accumulate draft assets again and try to get this sustained winner built that they haven't been able to. This is the best way they can do it, is trading Myles Garrett. And from Seattle's perspective, look, I've seen the arguments. Well, we don't need an edge. Like, this would be like, in a World Series example, this would be like the Toronto Blue Jays saying, we don't need Shohei Ohtani. Right. Yeah, you don't need him. Like, can you imagine what that lineup would look like if they had Shohei Ohtani right now? That is the kind of player Myles Garrett is in football equivalents. Like, the guy has had 10-plus sacks 8 straight years. He's already got 10 sacks this year, 5 of them being this last game. He leads the league in tackles for loss. He's an outstanding run defender. I mean, he's just a monster. He's a great football player. Like, and you look at the way the contract that he signed in March. I mean, he just got an extension with the Browns, but it was heavily loaded with a signing bonus. The Browns are going to have some big dead cap hits, but they're going to save some cap space every year trading him. And the acquiring team has a cap hit under $2 million for the rest of this year, under $9 million next year, under $17.5 million in 2027, and an affordable $21.3 million in 2028. You're looking at 4 years of cap hits under $21.5 million, Rob, for a future first ballot Hall of Famer that is still very much in the prime of his career. Cleveland can use that as ammo, like, we want maximum return because you're getting this long-term deal at a bargain. I wouldn't be afraid to trade their next 3 first-round picks if this was a possibility. That's how good this player is. You put him with Leonard Williams, who are you going to double team? You put him with Byron Murphy. Like, if you're an offensive coordinator, you are not going to sleep during the week going into that game. And imagine how much pressure it takes off your talented back seven. Like, this is clearly a pipe dream trade that is probably not going to happen. But if I'm John Schneider, like, I'm ringing the phone up a few times over there with Jimmy Haslam and company and just seeing, like, look, can I talk some common sense to you? Like, we're a contender. We're one of the few teams he'll waive his no trade clause for. Like, we'll give you first round picks. We'll give you Derek Hall. Like, we'll give you a nice package. Like, Seattle's one of the few teams I think is equipped to give Cleveland something that they might actually be willing to make a move. So I don't know that it happens, but the finances, the fit, the Cleveland Browns situation, like, it all lines up that it would make sense for both teams to me.
Well, it does make sense, I think, for a lot of different reasons. Again, as you said, I don't think that this is very likely to happen. But at the same time, I think that I do think that the NFL has proven over and over again that if you are willing to roll the dice and you can hit big, then of course you can wind up walking away with the Lombardi Trophy. And, a lot of times people will, will mention the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, gambled on Jalen Carter. And, of course, they're the defending Super Bowl champions. Some people scoffed at the price that the Green Bay Packers gave for Micah Parsons, and now they have the number 1 seed in the NFC. Again, there is always going to be some risk. But at the same time, the reward, when you are as quality of a team as the Seahawks are right now, if you can just get that guy that puts you over the top, then I think that is something that you have to at least consider. And I mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles because wide receiver has been a position I still think is one of concern for the Seahawks. So if A.J. Brown is really that upset, go get him. I think that he is a different style than the players I talked about before, a Jalen Waddle or one of those speed guys that I think could really take the top off of defenses and really take advantage of Sam Darnold's strengths. But at the same time, again, my point is that if you are going to make a trade, look, I think that there are a lot of quality middle range players that can make the Seahawks better. But if you really are going to go for, swing for the fences, again, to use that expression, here we are in, World Series time, then why not go for it? And you have a general manager who's shown the willingness to do exactly that.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw one other name out, which is going to surprise people with all the positive talk that I've had on Drake Thomas. But if Devin Lloyd was available for the Jaguars, I don't know that you would have to give up. We're not talking these first-round pick packages and stuff for him because he's in the last year of his deal. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option. There's rental possibility there. That's the risk that you play. But you don't have to pay as much. If Jacksonville, they don't look like a playoff team at this point. The last few weeks, they have not looked good. Now, they're still very much in the hunt. They might not be selling anything, but a guy that's at the end of his rookie deal that has played his best football, you're going to get maximum return. Like, you put him next to Ernest Jones as your 2 off-ball linebackers, that might be something that Mike McDonald is extremely intrigued by. So, again, these are pipe dream trades. That's one I don't expect to happen. A.J. Brown, I don't expect the Eagles are going to be dealing. Though Philadelphia has dealt really good players before. If they're not happy, they will make those moves. They're not afraid to do that. And I know that John Schneider has got a good relationship with Howie Roseman, too. So there's a possibility that something could happen there. But those names we just threw out, like, I wouldn't expect to see any of them wearing a Seahawks uniform. Jalen Waddle's probably in that discussion too, where I'd be skeptical that the Dolphins are going to want to deal in. But those are the kind of guys you're looking at that can really elevate a team. And if you're looking for a one guy away type thing, I think that there's some subjectivity to that. Myles Garrett is that guy. Like, Myles Garrett is a player, you put him with everything else Seattle's got in defense. Like, again, offensive coordinators, they are not going to be sleeping during the week preparing to play for the Seattle Seahawks. That is a guy that you will pay that price, and you can justify doing it for a player of his talent, his Hall of Fame caliber. So with this being said, expect to see if there is a trade. There's going to be one of those classic John Schneider ones, day 3, flipping for a veteran who ends up being better in Seattle. He's done that so many times, but you can dream that maybe there's going to be another one of those multiple first-round trades, and this time it's going to hit with a guy like Myles Garrett. When we come back, we are going to be taking a look at what's new with Seattle's upcoming opponent, the Washington Commanders, as we steer into Week 9. That'll be up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? That's what you call pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Go Long. Rougiet Go Long isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for your confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use the promo code LOCKEDNFL for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDNFL. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. This episode is also brought your way by FanDuel. The NFL season's in the midst of Week 9. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. If you're somebody like me that enjoys player props, such as how many touchdowns Sam Darnold will throw against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football, or you like to build a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets for one of the games on the Week 9 slate, or just jumping in live for quick bets as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download a FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The bye week is officially in the books. It's time to get back to action. The Seahawks returned to practice yesterday. They're off today, and then it's on to game week to play the Washington Commanders, who got blown out last night by the Kansas City Chiefs. It was an ugly performance. Even though Washington did get a couple interceptions on Patrick Mahomes, they weren't really able to cash in on those opportunities. Marcus Mariota struggled in place of the starting quarterback Jaden Daniels, who is expected to practice on Wednesday. So that is going to be the big storyline with Washington this week. Will we see the defending Rookie of the Year back under center? Or is this going to be Marcus Mariota season on Sunday Night Football again for Washington? Right now, it sounds very much like Daniels has a great chance to play in this game. Seattle is going to be playing Washington more at full strength. But it's been weird watching this team this year, Rob, because last year they stunned everybody by getting all the way to the NFC Championship game. They gave the Eagles a fight for a half, and then Philadelphia pulled away in the second half to advance to the Super Bowl. And it came out of nowhere with a rookie quarterback and a lot of older players on the roster. And they brought a lot of those same guys back this season. And that is what it feels like I have been watching the couple times that I've watched the Washington Commanders. They've got some outstanding players, but they also have a lot of old guys that are in their mid-30s that are playing significant snaps. And they look old and slow in a lot of departments. And that's why they're 3-5. They've had injuries, and not having your starting quarterback clearly a huge issue. But even when he's been in the lineup, this team they haven't looked like the team that we saw that got to the NFC Championship last year. And I wonder if it's because a lot of those players that they brought back are just another year older, and you're seeing it on the field against younger football teams.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research about the teams that go to the Super Bowl and then lose and how much struggles they have the next year. And I think that it's just the obvious wear and tear on their bodies, especially for an aging roster, as you referenced. And I think that's exactly what the Washington Commanders look like, is an aging team that, as you noted, played into the NFC Championship game a year ago. They played in one of the most physical divisions in all of the NFL, in my opinion. As I've said many times before, I think that the Seahawks happen to play in the best division in the NFL, but the Seahawks are young and they're fast And the Washington Commanders, kind of to the point that we were talking about a few moments ago about the offensive line group, I just think that this is a group for the Washington Commanders that is better on paper than it is in reality. And I don't mean any disrespect to Gus Bradley's squad here. This is Dan Quinn's squad here. This is a very talented football team, but at the same time, one that I view as a little bit past their prime at some of the key positional groups. You saw any of you who were watching on YouTube, then you just saw some of the key additions, the key injuries, key rookies. And if you did not see that, again, I'm going to mention some players that the Washington Commanders brought in via trade or free agency that sound like, oh my goodness, this is an all-pro roster. I mean, the left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, the first-round pick, the right tackle, Josh Connolly, Seattle zone, played at the University of Oregon. Deebo Samuel, of course. The rookie running back, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, is a dynamic talent, but at the same time, somewhat unproven. And I thought it was a little bit pompous for them to trade Brian Robinson, a very talented back, a very productive back, to the 49ers just because they felt like they had a rising superstar. Again, Von Miller. I'm remiss in saying Von Miller's name. I mean, again, Washington sounds like a team that is on their way to the NFC Championship game. And as you said, Corbin, they're 3-5. And obviously the injury to their star quarterback, Jaden Daniels, has played a role in that, but they have not looked as good in any game so far this season as they looked down the stretch in last year. So I do think that this is a team that has gotten old very, very quickly and just feels like they've lost a little bit of the magic that Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner, number 2 overall pick, was able to kind of sprinkle some fairy dust on Washington a year ago. Well, that fairy dust went up in the smoke.
I think something, and obviously you being a draft analyst, that you can weigh in on this too, but for those that are arguing against the idea of trading a bunch of draft picks to get a proven veteran player, look at what the Commanders did this offseason. They traded picks away to get Laramie Tunsil, to get Deebo Samuel, and they only had 5 picks in the draft and only 3 in the first 4 rounds. They didn't have a third rounder. Connerly's been a starter, but he's had his rookie struggles. And you look at the rest of their draft class, they haven't gotten much out of that group. And you couple that with how old they are, like bringing in Von Miller, he still has a little juice, the situational guy, but like that is a prime example. And Bobby Wagner, he's done some good things this year, but Bobby Wagner also had some plays Monday night that he looked really lethargic and slow in coverage, and the Chiefs took advantage of it. Like, there are a lot of players on this roster who have had great careers that have the name recognition, but the play is not matching that right now. And so it seems like Washington's in kind of a weird spot because they went for it. They went all out this offseason, bringing in these talented players with a team that got so close last year when it feels like, maybe they could have made one of those additions, but have a little more emphasis on trying to get younger too, because even on the outside, they just gave Terry McLaurin a new contract, but he's almost 30, which not an old player by any means, but I mean, this is a roster where a lot of the key players are at 30 or well north of 30. And if you don't have a bunch of dynamic young guys that can help even the score, so to speak, that kind of stuff can catch up with you very quickly. And I think we've seen that. And that's not to take this team lightly. I still think this is going to be a really tough game. I think Washington's a talented football team. I think Dan Quinn has done a really nice job there. However, the proof, as you like to say, is in the pudding that there's a lot of old dudes on this roster, and they don't look spry like they did last year. And teams have been cashing in on that on offense and on defense this year. Getting Jaden Daniels back is the X factor. He can absolutely elevate this team. And at the same time, you don't have the impact rookies. You don't have a lot of the impact young players, and you have a lot of starters that are 33, 34 and up. That is not a good recipe for sustained success in the National Football League.
No, it isn't. And I think there are another couple of things here at play. I think, for one, with all due respect to the offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, I think he's a very talented play caller, certainly a talented play designer. But I also think that, the NFL teams have had an opportunity now to, kind of acclimate to how he and Jaden Daniels, again, kind of worked that magic dust a year ago. And I think that Mike Macdonald has proven over and over again so far in his season and a half in the NFL with the Seahawks as head coach, that he can mix and match with just about anybody from an offensive perspective. So I'm really excited to see his defense. That said, as you noted, and I think that bears repeating, I'm excited to talk about it in tomorrow's show when we're going to look at all the matchups. But Jaden Daniels is a different kind of a guy, and his ability to draw the pressure in, run around, and create big plays down the field. If Seattle does, in fact, has Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love back in the secondary as we are expecting, then there's going to be some time where the defense has to kind of adjust. And so I do think that this is a game that, it feels like on paper that Seattle should win, but at the same time, I think Washington has an awful lot of pride, and they have their superstar coming back as well. So very much going to be fascinated by how this game turns out.
And they're playing for their season in this game. If they fall to 3-6, not that they can't make the playoffs, but good luck. Like, that is a uphill climb. So this is desperation season now for Washington. You don't want to fall asleep against desperate teams. So I'm expecting the very best from Washington this week, especially with Jaden Daniels back. If he's back, we'll see how that plays out this week during the practices for Washington. But we will be diving into the matchups tomorrow. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. As I just noted, it's Matchup Wednesday, a normal week, normal scheduled programming. We'll be diving into all the key positional battles to watch when the Seahawks head over to Landover for Sunday Night Football against the Commanders. Make sure that you tune in and don't miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Go Hawks.